Well, a very, very warm welcome to you guys. Hi, it's Cassim. I want to firstly start off by thanking you very, very much for joining me today. And I really hope that something that I share with you today can help you to become a higher, fuller expression of who you're capable of becoming. Over the next hour, I want to share with you notes on the topic of why character is necessary. I repeat, over the next kind of hour or so, I want to share with you some notes on the topic of why character is necessary. Just before we actually get into today, guys, I would love for you to, if something that I share with you today is useful, or you find it useful, or you find that it's pointed you in the right direction, I'd love for you to like and subscribe to my channel Cassimotive on YouTube, so that that's where I can keep sending you more of these kinds of videos and share with you strategies and philosophies and tactics that can in some way help you to become a higher, fuller expression of who you're capable of becoming. So over the next hour or so, what I want to do is that I want to share with you notes that I have made on the topic of character. I want to share with you things that I've been thinking about, quotes that I've seen, observations that I've made on the topic of character, and I hope that in some way it can perhaps lead you to improving your character. Or perhaps if you've never even thought about character, or you've never taken a class on character, perhaps it might be able to give you some level of insight, be able to perhaps trigger you or send you in a direction so that you can improve your life, so that you can live abundantly, so that you can in some way become a higher, fuller expression of who you're capable of becoming. And I want to begin today off by sharing with you a story. I've shared this story many times before, but I want to share it with you because it was such a dramatic, defining moment in my life. So about 4 years ago, I was studying a man called Tim Schmidt. Tim Schmidt is the co-founder of the Eden Project. And if you're not familiar with the Eden Project is botanical gardens in Cornwall, towards the bottom of the UK. And he said he was doing a sort of a talk, and in this talk he was explaining that many times he goes to conferences and he goes to seminars and he meets people at these conferences and these seminars who say to him, well, Tim, you know, what's the answer to solving the global climate problem? And they say, how are we going to save the plants, or how are we going to save these species of animals? And Tim Schmidt gave an answer which I'll never forget because it was so defining for me. Tim Schmidt said that I hate it when people ask me that question, because I explained to those individuals that we do not need to worry about climate change. We don't need to worry about the environment. We don't need to worry about the oceans rising. What we need to worry about is about the human beings, is about the children, is about the individuals who we're going to leave behind on the planet. Now, you may not have just got what I've just shared with you, but that statement that I've just made is a very profound statement. In other words, what Tim Schmidt said was, you don't need to worry about the planet. The planet has this incredible way of kind of creating this equilibrium. What you need to worry about are the human beings who are living in it, who are accelerating the melting, who are using the plastic, who are eating more than they have to eat, who are, you know, just creating just massive overuse of everything. That is who you need to worry about. 6 years ago, around 2016, 2014, I came to a crescendo in my life. And I came to a crescendo in my life because I had a bailiff come to my parents' house, my mum's house. My dad was at work, my mum was at home, and the bailiff came to my mother's house, and they explained to my mum that I was in debt, and that they were going to, if I didn't call them back and pay the debt that I had accrued up, that they were going to be able to have access to my mother's property. They were going to claim anything that I owned, and then they were going to sell it so that they can clear the debt. I was an estate agent at the time. I came back home from being an estate agent, and I remember the day because it was raining, and when I came home, my mum was crying. Now, I had only ever seen my mum crying twice in my life. The first time that I saw my mum cry was on the day that my biological father died at his funeral. The second time that I saw my mum crying was that day that I came home and my mum was explaining to me what had happened, and the bailiffs had come to the house, and she started asking me, Cassim, are you in debt? Now, I had been keeping the fact that I was in debt from my mum for 2 years. And when I saw my mum crying that day, something in me changed. And the reason I say this is because I very strongly believe that mothers cry one of two tears. Mothers cry, firstly, tears of joy, right? Their child gets married, their child has a baby, their child graduates from university, their child gets a first job, right? These are incredible experiences from mother. The second type of crying that parents have is they cry because of disappointment, because of something that their child has done. And I recognized that that day when I saw my mum crying, that the reason why my mum was crying was not because of joy, was not because I'd done something amazing. My mum was crying because she was disappointed in the son that she had raised. My mum was crying because, and I felt this, where I felt that my mum was disappointed because she thought, is this a child that I brought into the world? This child is a product of me, and the manifestation of his results in the world are really simply an extension of me, of what I've taught him. And so if my son is in debt and he's been lying and he's not been paying court dates and he's been getting himself into loads of court fines and stuff like that, then that must tell me something about myself. And I recognized that day. And so that day I decided, right, okay, clearly what I thought I knew about life is wrong. Because I thought I had it all together. I thought I had all the answers. I thought I knew how to become successful. But clearly I've made an error in judgment. Clearly the path that I thought I was going down isn't right, because I've ended up in debt. I've ended up disappointing my mum. So something about me needs to change. Something about me is, there is a crack in me. There is a flaw within me. And at that time, I didn't quite figure out what that flaw is. What I later found out, as I'm going to get into, is that my character was flawed. So that day, I went out on this incredible path to basically study people who had messed their lives around, fucked their lives up, or that had messed up their lives. So I looked up people who had started from the bottom. I call them anomalies. People who were never supposed to win at life. People who were never supposed to accomplish anything. And yet they did. They managed to do the impossible. They managed to break the mold. They managed to beat the statistic. And so I was like, well, how did they do it? What are the principles that allowed them to be able to break those molds, to be able to break those statistics? And so as I started on this path of studying these individuals, I began to notice something. And that kind of brings me to one of the first statements and notes that I made about the importance of character and why character is necessary, which is that I discovered that it is possible to be successful and be a dickhead. Let me repeat that statement. I discovered that it is possible to be successful and be a dickhead. Now, I always presumed that if you were going to be successful and you were going to be somebody who's doing great things in the world, and you've got an incredible family, and you've got a mortgage, and you live in a really nice neighborhood, and you've got a family, and you've got a wife, and your kids are going to really good schools, and you get to go on really amazing holidays, I presumed that your character would also be the same. I presumed that you would also be a good person. What I discovered was that there is a different set of rules and principles for success, and there is a different set of rules and principles and laws for your character. And that is why I now very strongly believe that there are essentially two elements to life. And this is, I guess, the second thing that I want to share with you today. I've come to understand that there are two aspects to life. The first is what I call the A to Z. The A to Z is essentially what is known as the science of achievement. It's knowing how to get from where you are to where you want to go, right? So that entails things such as goal setting, it entails things such as building a team, it involves things such as communication, creativity, that kind of stuff, right? And all of that stuff is called a science, because I've discovered that if you do similar things to people who've already done certain things, that you will get the same kinds of results as they've already achieved. Meaning, for example, if you wanted to become an accountant, you don't need to be some massively brainy person, but I discovered that if you follow the path that has already been set out by thousands of people who've become accountants, and you go to accountancy school, and you go and get your GCSEs and A levels, and you go and do your exams and you pass them, if you follow those steps, you will there or thereabouts become an accountant. Now, that doesn't mean that it might not take you longer, or you might have to take extra classes, or you might have to resit tests, but it does mean that if you follow those principles, if you follow those steps, there is a very likely chance that you're going to get there. The second aspect to life that I discovered, which was really interesting for me, is that I discovered that there is the second part of life is what is called the art of fulfillment, the art of living. In other words, the art of living is slightly a bit different. It's different in terms of what makes you happy is different to what's going to make me happy. You might define success and happiness as having a family, living in a two-bedroom Victorian semi-detached house in the center of town, whilst I might say that actually for me, getting married is not really that important. I would just rather have a partner. That actually for me, I would much rather not have an Audi A4, and I would just rather drive a Fiat Punto, but be able to travel all over the globe. I discovered that this art of living, there seems to be, like, the word that I like to use is finesse. I'm sure you've heard in like kitchens and stuff like that, you can have people who are chefs and they cook food very well, but they lack finesse. They lack a zing, a special quality, a flair that allows them to be able to elevate their food to a whole different level. And that cannot be taught. That's just something which you have to develop yourself. And so what I would share with you is, I know many of you here who are listening to me, you've pretty much mastered, or thereabouts, the A to Z. You know how to work hard, you know how to get what you want. But my question is, what about the art of living? My question is, what about your character? Because here's what I discovered. I discovered that success does not equal character. Just because you are successful, it doesn't mean that you have good character. Let me tell you how I discovered this. So about 2 years ago, I was doing a lot of research on why it is that people get divorced. Because in my quest, when I first started studying successful people, I only wanted to know one question, which is, how do you basically turn your life around? How do you start from nothing and build something and build an incredible life? That's all I wanted to know. And as I started this path and I started to discover that people can become successful and become dickheads, I then started to pursue a second question, which is, how do you become successful without ending up divorced, without ending up killing yourself, without ending up stepping on other people to get there, and when you get there, without ending up getting there and committing suicide? And in that path to answer that second question, it led me onto a path where I started studying people who had everything that most of us would define to be successful. Meaning they had a family, they had an incredible woman by their side, they had friends, they were able to travel around the world, they had freedom to be able to, if they really wanted to, take a month off on holiday because they have enough savings, or because they are that good at their job that their job will still take them back when they come back. These individuals lived in an incredible community of friends, of people who actually cared about the children, about safety, about the environment that they lived in. But here's what I discovered. I discovered that then somebody, in spite of all of that, would then go and cheat on their wife. That same person would then go and have a prostitute. And so my question was, how is that possible? How is it possible for somebody to have all of this and yet be successful, but in his work, he is the most horriblest person in the world, but that in his company he cheats people and he always has to have one over against people? I thought, how is that possible? And what I discovered was, again, that professional success does not equal personal success. I repeat, professional success does not equal personal success. See, as I began to study these individuals, I started looking at divorce. And I started listening and studying journals and articles and reading books by divorce lawyers, people who had been around when people were getting divorced. And my question was, what can they teach me about the divorce process and why people get divorced? And I found something incredible. It was one guy, I can't remember his name, but he said something that I'll never forget. He said that a lot of individuals who are successful, they will be successful in their workplace, but the mistake that they will make is that they will presume that professional success is the same as personal success. In other words, people presume that if I'm successful and I have everything, then I'm going to be a good person, that I'm going to be wise, that I'm going to be an individual who's disciplined, I'm going to be an individual who does what is right. If I'm torn between doing what is wrong but getting ahead, or doing what is right but going behind, that most people, they would rather choose the getting ahead and doing the wrong thing, because they're presuming and have made the assumption that because they're successful, that their character is also going to follow. I shared on my Facebook yesterday that there are 3 things that will destroy a man without character. I repeat, I shared on my Facebook yesterday and my Instagram that there are 3 things that will destroy a man without character. The first is power. If you are somebody who gates power, power simply amplifies who you are. So if you were a dickhead without power, when you become an individual with power, you're going to be an ultra, super wealthy dickhead. The second thing is money. Money as well amplifies who you are. If you are a really generous person without money and you look after people and you try your very best to look after people, if you become a millionaire or win the lottery, all it does is it amplifies the magnitude and the quantity of the people who you're going to be able to help. And the third thing that I shared is access to sex. Access to sex means prostitutes, means a young secretary, means you've seen it on television where somebody gets on television and all of a sudden there are women just pouring themselves at him. So let's go into many of the other notes that I wrote down, because I think that's kind of really set a good foundation for you as to why I wanted to talk to you about this subject and why I believe that character is so important. Because here's one of the other notes that I made. Character is a commitment to a set of values without compromise. What that means is, character is when you set some values that you are not willing to break. I meet many people who are successful and they'll tell me, Cassim, I will do 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 hours to become successful. Cassim, I will do whatever I have to do to become successful. I will move country, I will do this, I will do that. But when it comes to character, my question to you is, what will you not do to become successful? And here's what I've discovered. If you become successful and you don't know who you are and you don't know what you will not do, power, money, and access to sex will destroy you. And if you don't believe me, look at all these individuals like Jimmy Savile. Look at what happened to them when they got power. They were able to use that power, that money, that access to sex to be able to abuse those aspects of life and those resources on a huge magnitude. And so what I would share with you is, have you ever thought about what you will not do? I know you say what you will do. You say, I will do anything for love. My question to you is, what will you not do for love? Right? Because, you know, one of the many things that I've come, and I experience this all the time, is that I meet people who are in relationships and they're in abusive relationships and they're in relationships where they're unhappy. And many times I say to them, why are you still in the relationship? You're unhappy, you're not fulfilled, your partner, you're constantly arguing. And I say, why are you still within the relationship? And many times they say, well, Cass, I don't really know. And I many times have to explain to them that the reason why you're still in this abusive relationship, the reason why you're still in an unhappy relationship, is because you never defined for yourself what is too far. What kind of relationship would you not be prepared to be in where if it crosses this line, you can never go into it? And many people have never defined that for themselves. It is for this reason why I have a show called Journal Entries. Because journal entries forces individuals, and the whole point of that journal entries is to encourage people to start their own journaling. Because what I recognize is, if you don't know what you stand for, what is success, what is failure, what is good, what is bad, when power, when money, when access to sex arrive, and if you're clearly an ambitious person and you're even considering listening to this, when those resources present themselves, you're not going to be ready. You're not going to be able to handle what has been given onto you. There is a saying that says, to whom much is given, much is required. The required is, what will you not be prepared to do if you get the money? Here's my question. I hear people say all the time, well, Cassim, if I became a millionaire, I'd give loads of my money away. My question to you is, if you became a millionaire, what would you not do? Have you ever thought about that question? Character is a dedication to a set of standards without wavering. My question to you is, what would you not move on? What things in your life are so set that you are not prepared to move on them? Cassim, I absolutely do not believe that somebody should cheat. I don't care if I'm ever put in a situation where it's even close, or I'm even sensing that there is a possibility that my character could be challenged in a position of cheating. I would 100% be out of that, put myself out of that position. If I was working for a company and I hired somebody and they were making advances towards me, Cassim, I would fire the person. Because they would be putting me in a position where I would have to be waver, or I would be vulnerable to wavering on my standards. Cassim, my standard is I absolutely every single month give at least 5% of my money to charity. Every month, regardless of how much I've earned, every single month I will give 5% to charity. My question to you is, how predictable are you? Are you one thing in the morning, another person in the afternoon, a different person in the evening? Who are you? Let me put this another way. When people think of you, what do they think of you and say, don't even bother going to him about it? Don't even go and ask him. Because they already know that if they come to you, they already know what the answer is going to be. My question to you is, how many things in your life do people know you as for, as it's pointless even asking you? Because they know that if they ask you, they already know what the answer is going to be. So they don't even ask you. They never even put you in a position where you even have to make the choice. How many of those situations do you have in your life? How many of those areas of your life do you have? Because if people think of you and they say, he's never going to go for that, he's never going to do that, that means you have not got strong enough values or standards that you're setting yourself up for. Let me put this another way. If you have people in your life who even come to you and they ask you to do something corrupt, and they ask you to do something like your boss comes to you and asks you to lie on a form, if they even come to you, you're already in trouble. Because the fact that they've come to you and asked you is a sign that they actually believe that you would do it. They actually think that if they came to you and asked you to lie or sign on a form, that the fact that they come to you shows that they actually think that you would do it. Your character so far, your standards, your values are in such a way at the moment that they're not loud enough. That people actually think that you would say yes. Character is the constant effort to integrate one's words, deeds, and actions. You know, many times I hear people say, Cassim, you know, I want to be successful. Cassim, people should give to this. Cassim, I believe people should be like this. Cassim, this is the way that I am. I don't care for what people tell me. And everybody who knows me will know this because I'm constantly telling them this. I don't care for what you tell me. Show me. Let me see it. Let me see. Let your words be the weight of your life. No, let me put this another way. Let your life be the weight of your words. Meaning, when you talk about people shouldn't cheat, when you talk about people should give to charities, can your life prove that? If I observed you, if I watched you, without you knowing that I was watching you, a bit creepy, I know, but if we observed your life and watched you and looked to you at what you did, would your life be a representation of your actions, of your words, your deeds and your actions? Because the word integrate means to be whole. It means to be one. In fact, for the last 4 years, every single year I set a word for myself as a word to kind of be the basis for my life. And I use that word as kind of the foundation for the way that I live a year. And for the last 4 years, the word that has been at the center of everything that I do is the word integrity. The word integrity means to be whole, to be one. Because if you look at my life, what I say is backed up by my life. And the reason why I say this is so important is because the foundation of trust is integrity. This is why I'm telling you that the character is so important. Trust, the foundation of trust is integrity. So if you are not one, let me put this another way. When you are consistent, when you become so predictable in your character, that's when people trust you. Somebody said to me, we were having a conversation with somebody the other day, and somebody was saying to me, you know, Cassim, you ask a lot of deep questions about what would you do if you either could know about the future or you could know about the past, or what would you do if you had a year to live? You ask all these kinds of questions. Let me ask you a question. And he said to me, Cassim, what do you think is the biggest thing that is missing in the world at the moment? And I absolutely, without a breath, told him that the single number one thing that is missing in the world at the moment is leadership. If there was one thing that I could put out into the world, it would be leadership. And the reason why I say leadership, because intertwined with leadership is character. Because to become a leader mandates that you have to do what you don't want to do. It mandates that you become a long-time thinker. It mandates that you become a person who is asking, how can I be of service, instead of asking, how can you serve me? And so when you begin to become a leader and your words, because let me go back, and unless you begin to develop the mentality of a leader, what will happen is you will be like a manager. Managers complain about problems but never do anything about them. And that is what, and thus a lot of us don't trust our managers. Where you elevate your life is where you start thinking like a leader, where not only do you recognize problems and there are issues, but you now start doing something about them. And so now your words and your actions are starting to become one. And when you begin to become one, you say something, you then back it up. That is right there is where trust is built. When you begin to develop trust, that is when you now attract followers. And I don't want to get into loads of leadership because that's a completely different thing that I need to talk to you about. But my point being is, you cannot be a leader unless you are trusted. People do not want to follow people who they cannot trust. There is a saying that I'm going to paraphrase, which goes something on the lines of, if the blind lead the blind, they both end up in the ditch. If you've got a load of managers, and many of you can relate to this, if you've got a load of managers who are all complaining about a problem, who are all saying this is an issue and that's an issue, but none of them ever do anything about it, they're all still stuck in a hole. It takes a leader to come forward and say, right, what solutions have we got? Right, what resources and tools have we got that we can leverage, that we can pivot so that we can achieve the objective, so that we can get out of this hole, so that we can realize the vision that we have. And so I would ask you, how much integrity is there with your life? And the reason why I'm asking you this is because one of the other notes that I wrote down here is that the only thing that can protect your success is your character. Let me repeat that statement. The only thing that can protect your success is your character. If you become successful and you don't have character, you will lose what you've achieved. Many of you, I'm sure you can relate to this, where you've seen somebody like a footballer or a basketballer or a singer. In fact, I learned this lesson actually from the X Factor, because I saw people win the X Factor and I thought, wow, these people have won the X Factor, they've got a load of cash, they've been signed to a record label. These individuals are going to become successful. They're going to do incredible things. They're going to be able to produce amazing music. They're going to be all over the charts. But then 3 or 4 years would pass by and I still don't see the individuals. Or maybe they might get a Christmas single, but then they will disappear. Like, for example, a guy called Daniel Johnson, I remember, was an amazing singer, and yet I don't hear about him. And so my question was, why is it that some people on the X Factor or some individuals achieve success and then they just disappear? Well, here's what the reason why is because they're one-hit wonders. They fluked their success. They somehow managed to get, they got lucky. Let me share with you a secret to success that many of you are not going to be able to understand, but I want to share it with you for when you reach success. When you become successful, one of the issues that most people struggle with, and most of you are not going to get this, but the more successful you become, an issue begins to arise in your life, which is the issue of fear. Fear of losing the success. It is for this reason why a lot of the time people who become successful become control freaks. They become nuts, they become crazy, because they've spent a little while building their success, and now that they've built their success, they have to have control over everything, because if they delegate and relinquish power and relinquish influence, and decisions in their organization or in their life, what will happen is that they leave room for failure, right? And then fear starts creeping in. And so one of the things that stops people from growing and from reinventing themselves is that they maintain their life. It is for this reason that I tell people that the biggest enemy to your success is your last success. I repeat, the biggest enemy to your success, let me put this another way. The biggest enemy to your progress is your last success. This is where I meet a couple who've been together for 5 years, but they've got married, but they want to keep everything as if it was when they first began their relationship. And you think, how can you maintain your relationship in the same way as it was at the beginning? You want to do exactly the same things. It's been 5 years, you've changed, your desires have changed, your body has changed, you've experienced life more, you've known different things about your partner, about their fears, about their joys, about their ambitions, about their visions, right? Their habits, their flaws. You've learned different things about them. So how can you possibly maintain the same life that you did at the beginning of your relationship? It's not really possible. And so what I would share with you guys and encourage you is, I would encourage you highly, 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 highly to look at your character. Because I wrote down another thing, which is success will take you to the top, but it was your character that will keep you there. If you achieve success, but you don't work on your character, you will lose, or you will end up becoming like those individuals, which I come across, who achieve success and then all they do is try to maintain it. And the issue is that anything which is not growing is by definition diminishing. It is literally dying. So it is it takes more effort to maintain something than to grow something. So I would encourage you in your own life, grow your life, grow who you are as a person, work on yourself, work on your character, work on your persuasion, work on your love, work on your empathy, work on your openness, work on how humble you are, work on your communication, work on your perseverance. Work on these. Because I've come to understand that whilst change happens naturally, progress does not. You will not, I'm telling you, your hair will grow differently, your skin will get saggier, you might even get promoted naturally in your workplace, but to progress is going to be a different thing. To actually become a more loving person, a more empathetic person, a more understanding person does not come naturally. That is something which you actually have to actively work on, actively improve. My question to you is, how much time in the last 30 days have you spent working on you, working on your character? Something for you to think about. I wrote down here that character is the willingness to forego pleasure. I wrote this statement down because I noticed that people with character were prepared to give up things that they loved, things that they were passionate about, in order to maintain their character. For example, I would find like somebody like Nelson Mandela. He was a guy of character. Nelson Mandela was a lawyer, was one of the first black lawyers in South Africa, was making incredible amounts of money for a black person. He decided that he believed so strongly that a white person was not superior to a black person. He believed that so strongly that he was prepared to give up his life of resources, of amazing money, of this incredible success that he had achieved. He decided to give it up for over 20 years to go to prison instead. He decided to forego seeing his own family, right, If you go to prison, you can't see your family. You cannot see your children. In fact, one of his children died and he wasn't even there for the funeral. What kind of person would give up seeing their own children or one of their children die to be in prison? What kind of person would do that? Somebody with character. Somebody who believes something so strongly that they will not allow anything to compromise it. Let me share another statement with you which I wrote down. I wrote down that I wrote down that character is what is left after success is gone. I repeat, character is what is left over after success is gone. You know, if you are anybody who genuinely wants to become successful, one of the things that you will know is success fluctuates. Sometimes you're successful, sometimes you're a failure. Sometimes you invent in an idea and it goes really well. Sometimes you invent in another idea and it doesn't go very well. Sometimes you write a book and it sells loads of copies. Sometimes you write a book and it doesn't sell loads of copies. Life is this eternal dance between the good and the bad, between the ups and the downs. This kind of yin and yang, this fight between war and peace, between good and evil. It's this constant battle, and the world is constantly trying to balance itself out. And if you understand that, then you also know that your life is going to go up and down. And if you get that, then you will also understand that if your character is not intact, when you lose success, you will have nothing. There is a reason why I studied the second question. And if you hear what I started studying how do you become successful without ending up divorced, without ending up stepping on everybody to get to your success, without ending up becoming a dickhead, and without ending up becoming successful and then ending up killing yourself. The reason why I added ending up killing yourself is because what I noticed was that a lot of men would achieve success, and when they lost everything, they would commit suicide. And I asked myself, why? You have a family, you have a wife, you have children. Why would you commit suicide when you have all of these incredible things around you? You have employees who still need you. And what I found was that person had not worked on their character. And so this is why I highly recommend to you that if you are somebody who desires to do great things in your life, work on your character. Because when everything is lost, when your family leaves you, when your friends betray you, at least your character is going to be intact. In fact, one of the other statements that I wrote down is, when you die, people will not remember you for what you accomplished. People will talk about who you were. My God, I need to pay myself because the stuff that I'm giving you is too good. When you pass away, nobody is going to talk about how many houses you had and how many sales you did and how amazing your Lamborghini was. People are going to talk about the person who you became. My question to you is, if you died today, what would people say at your funeral about you? See, I learned this lesson because, and this is why I decided that, and I came to the conclusion that there are two aspects to life. I came to the conclusion that there's the A to Z, and then there is the art of living. Because what I noticed was that some people are so focused on becoming successful, they're so focused on getting what they want, that they neglect to enjoy the journey. They neglect to remember that the whole point of becoming successful is so that you can help other people. It's so that you can go back and help somebody else achieve the success that you've managed to accomplish. But here's what I noticed. If you didn't work on your character, you would not go back and help somebody else to rise. In fact, all the people who if you want to know what the difference is between someone who is successful and somebody who is great, the difference is the person who is great goes back and helps somebody else. For greatness is determined on service. Let me give you the definition of greatness which was given by Martin Luther King Jr. Martin Luther King Jr. said that not everybody can be famous, but everybody can be great, because greatness is determined by service. Question is, to the most of the world, we would most of the world, if they looked at what you have, you would be considered successful. My question to you is, how many people have you gone back and helped to reach your level of happiness, of joy, of relationships, of peace, of ambition, of success, right? Of friendship? How many people? Because all of us, there is an area of life where we're flourishing. My question is, how many people have you gone back and helped? Because if you haven't gone back and helped anyone, you cannot possibly consider yourself to be great. You can't consider your life to be great. You're successful, absolutely. And so this is why I say that I highly, highly encourage you to really look and work on your character, because if you don't work on your character, you will do as so many people do, which is they become successful, but they forget where they came from. That is why that phrase, "don't forget where you came from," arose. Because I found that the more successful you become, the further away you get away and you forget about where you started. But if you're a person of character, you remember where you came from. You remember that the whole reason why you're becoming successful is so that you can go back and help people who are exactly where you first started off. My question to you is, how many people are you helping which have started where you're at? If there is no one behind you who can articulate what you stand for, what you believe in, who can tell me what your principles are, what you believe in, the way which you believe that the world should be, that's a problem. That's a big problem. Because that means that you are spending the majority of your life on you. It is all about you, how high you can rise, how far you can go, how much money you can earn. There is a saying that says, there will never be enough. Because there will never be enough. You make 50k a year. When you get to 50k, you want 60. When you get to 60, you want 100. When you get 100, you want 200. And every single person says, no, Cassim, I'm going to be different. If you're going to be different, could your life prove it? Because remember earlier on that I said to you that character is directly, trust is obtained by, my apologies. Trust is developed by integrity, right? And so, meaning that you become somebody who is consistent, you become one. So my question to you is, are you somebody who we can trust? If you say that we should be helping people who have less, can your life back that up? Because if your life cannot back it up, my question is, what are you doing with your life? Something for you to think about. I wrote down that character is not based on age, sex, or anything like that. You see, I always presumed that the older you get, the better you would become. I was wrong. I've discovered that there are people who are 60, 70 years of age and they're still dickheads. I've discovered there are people who are 60, 70 years of age and are even more selfish than now in their 60s and 70s than they were when they were younger. I always presumed that, the most generous people on the planet are going to be those people who are older. That people who are going to be of good character are going to be people who are older. That is not true. Just because you're getting older, it doesn't mean that you're becoming wiser or getting better. My question to you is your philosophy that you are presuming that as you get older, you are going to get better? Something for you to think about. I wrote down here that it is possible to build character. And the reason why I made that statement and I wrote that down is because I've come to the conclusion that many of you guys are under the belief that character is something which you're born with. There are some people who are just good people and there are some people who are just bad people. I disagree. In fact, coincidentally, yesterday I was having a conversation with a guy called Gary, and Gary was saying to me, you know, Cassim, I just don't care about anyone. He said, I have a daughter, and even to this day, I don't care. I don't care for anyone. I'm selfish. I don't care for anybody but myself, me and my daughter. And I said to Gary, interesting observation, and I'm interested in your point of view. Can I add some thoughts to you and just share some things with you? I shared with Gary that, look, Gary, you know, there are three ways in which any human being makes any change in their life. The first reason why we change is because usually something bad happens. 9 times out of 10 when we change anything in our lives is because something major catastrophe has happened. I.e., we've been smoking, we've been drinking, we've been taking we've been taking cocaine, we've been taking acid, and now we've got to the point where we've had a heart attack, we've gone to the hospital, and the doctors told us if we continue, we are going to die. Right? We've been in a job, we don't like the job, and we've been complaining about the job. We've got to the point now where that person is now just their contract has been renewed, and we've now got into an argument with them, and we've been fired. And now we've been forced to go and look for a job, even though we could have looked for the job all that time that we were complaining. We're in a relationship, we know the relationship is not healthy, but yet, you know, we don't come out of the relationship. One day, our partner's been abusing us, our partner's been hitting us, but one day we're abused to the point and hit to the point where we end up unconscious, we end up in hospital, and our mum comes to the hospital, and we've been hiding the fact that we've been in an abusive relationship, and our mum now sees us all bruised up. And that shame, we no longer have to suffer alone because the shame has been exposed. And now we're going to get out of the relationship, because now we have somebody who can back us up, because we haven't been alienated from everybody, all our friends and everyone. The second reason why human beings change is because of something amazing comes into our life. Meaning that we get into a relationship, the person doesn't like smoking, and we decide, you know what, I love her and I don't want to smoke anymore because she doesn't like it. And we change, right? This kind of thing. But what I'm more interested in, and is really the one that's more relevant here today for many of you who are going to be listening to me, is that the third reason, and I only discovered this about literally 8 months ago, is that human beings can change by choice. Meaning that something bad doesn't have to happen and something good doesn't have to happen. Human beings, we have this incredible thing which we are able to analyze. We're able to use what's called wisdom. We can look at our lives and say, well, I have been a bit of a dickhead. Clearly, I am selfish, but really, like, is that really the good way to live a good life? Does that really make me any better? Does my being a selfish person in any way be of benefit to myself? When I have a child, and at some point I'll probably die, is my child going to be living in a better world when I die than if I'm alive? Because I want my child to live in a better world than I did. And so as a result, I need to model for her what a man should be treated like, what a girl should be treated like, etc., etc. Do you see what I'm saying? So human beings, we can make a choice. We can literally analyze and come up with a decision without being pushed or being inspired. And I would share with you that character is something where if you've been a dick, if you've been corrupt, if you've been a liar, if you've been somebody who tries to cheat and tries to get ahead the quick way, you can decide from today, I'm not going to be like that anymore. From today, I will not lie. I made that decision because obviously when I was in debt, that day that I had the bailiff come to my mum's door, I was always so used to lying because I had to lie to my parents about being in debt. And I said to myself, I can no longer lie because this lying is sending me down a path, which is part of the reason why mum was like, who is this person? This cannot be the son that I raised. The lying was sending me down what I call the dark side of life. It was a path that it was never going to end well because when you do one lie, you then have to remember that lie. And so when somebody asks you about that lie, you have to kind of remember that lie. And then can you imagine if you have multiple lies? You're walking around with this massive rucksack of lies trying to remember them. It's just exhausting. So what I would share with you is, human beings, we have the capacity to actually decide to get better, to improve our character. And that is something which is available to every single one of us. The next point that I want to share with you, which I wrote down here, is corruption is a result of a person without character being offered an opportunity to get ahead by cheating a system. Let me repeat what I've just said. Corruption is a result of a person without character being offered an opportunity to get ahead by cheating a system. You know, I've spent quite a considerable amount of my time over the last couple of weeks looking at why it is that Africa is still the way that it is. Why is there still people in Africa who are not educated? People in Africa who are poor? People in Africa who cannot get drinking water? People in Africa who cannot feed their families? This has been bamboozling for me. It's been shocking for me. And I've been like, why? Why is this happening? And I found that one of the reasons why that is, there are many reasons, but one of the main reasons is around corruption. There is a systematic form of corruption that is in Africa, meaning that everybody puts themselves before other people. And any time that you or anybody, even if you are a really good person and you have a great idea, let's say you set up a business, the issue is you will have to bribe people. There is so much red tape. There is so many systems that you'd have to go through to even set up a company in Africa. Or as soon as people know that you have money, you will be bribed all the time, and you have to pay bribes all the time. And the level of corruption is so huge that most Africans who are educated enough to go back and try to help people in Africa, the obstacles become overwhelming that they just don't even bother. Because it's ridiculous, right? And what I wanted to know is, what is the root of corruption? And what I found was that corruption happens when an individual is offered an opportunity to get ahead by breaking a system. Meaning that an individual decides, somebody comes along and says, look, if you lie on here, or if you sign this form here to allow me to do this, I will pay you this. A person of character would say no. In fact, as I alluded to earlier on, that person wouldn't even be approached. If your character is not strong, if you're not already working on your character and somebody comes to you and offers you an opportunity to go ahead, the person without character will take the opportunity. And I will reiterate, going back to what I first began this whole conversation and these notes with you on, which is, what would you not be prepared to do to get ahead? What would you say no to in order to get ahead? I also wrote down that people with character do not live on what is popular. I repeat, people with character do not live on what is popular. See, if you want to be a person of character, you have to be willing to step aside and allow everybody else to look amazing and allow everybody else to have these incredible things whilst you stay on the right path. In fact, I'll be honest with you and tell you right now that if you genuinely want to win and still have your character intact, it's going to take you probably 2 or 3 times longer to get there. And you have to be so strong within yourself that you are prepared to wait for the 2 times longer to get ahead legitimately. You know, I hear a lot of people say, well, Cassim, you know, a lot of people who make it, who have money, they've cheated and they've been corrupt. And a lot of people have, but there are some people who haven't. And my question was, how did they do it? Well, one of the answers is, it took them longer. They did it, but they had to do it right, which means that they had to say no to a lot of things. I read a really interesting book called Winners Never Cheat by a guy called John Huntsman. John Huntsman's company is a multi-billionaire, and he started a company which sells, he was the first person who came up with the plastic forks and plastic plates. His company was the first company to produce those. And he wrote this incredible book called Winners Never Cheat, even in bad times. And he was explaining in that book that one of the ways in which he was able to build a billion-dollar company and still have his character intact is that many times he had to say no to most deals. Because most deals were not equal, or they were corrupt, or they were related to someone who was a liar or a cheater, and he just didn't want to do business with them. So when I say that if you want to be successful and be intact, you have to be willing to say no to stuff, my question to you is, are you prepared to make a decision that is in your company is not going to be popular? Wherein you are the CEO of the company or the chairman of the company, and the decision that you make is going to allow your competitors today to get ahead, but will allow the organization in 10 years' time to win consistently. I remember I was studying Jeff Bezos, and he had a really strange strategy that he used. Jeff Bezos managed to convince his investors that Amazon for the first 10 years was not going to make a profit, and that they were going to gain market share in the first 10 years. Then after the first 10 years, they will make profit. Now, I thought to myself, my God, how the hell can you convince a load of investors who are simply out for profit and money to do that? That's insane. And what I realized was that Jeff Bezos believed so much in that strategy of getting market share that he refused to give up. He said no. I wonder how many times you say no in your life. I wonder how many times you say, I can't go with you there. No, I cannot go to a strip club, guys, because it will put me in a compromising position. And you're on a stag do, and unfortunately, your decision is not going to be popular with the lads. I don't know. It's just something for you to think about. The last thing that I wanted to leave you with, as we're closing for the hour, is that I wanted to leave you with this. People with character do not need policing. A person of character does not need to be policed, because they police themselves. In fact, you can trust that a person of character will do the right thing. My question to you is, if we left you in a compromising position, would you do the right thing? I wonder, if we put you in a really awkward position where we gave you an ultimatum and you didn't even know that we had access, we were watching you, where you had an opportunity to get ahead, but it meant doing something which is corrupt, I wonder if you would not make that decision. If somebody said to you, if you will only sleep with them once and they would pay off your mortgage, I wonder if you would say yes if nobody was watching you. I wonder if you need people to constantly watch you in order to do the right thing. I don't know. Just something for you to think about. And that closes the hour for why I wanted to share these notes with you on the topic of why character is necessary. I don't know whether it's been useful for you or not, but I really encourage you to really work on your character. I really want to encourage you to get as many books as you can on character from people like Dr. Miles Monroe, from people like John Maxwell. Really work on your character, for it is the only thing that will protect you when you lose everything. It is the only thing that will sustain your relationship once you manage to achieve that success. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you soon. Bye for now.